Let's take a closer look at the Clone Wars Ahsoka's Clone Trooper action figure, VC248.
Villa Varykino, living the Star Wars life.
Hello there, and thanks for visiting the Villa Varykino YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be taking a closer look at the Clone Wars Ahsoka's Clone Trooper TVC action figure, VC248. This is a super cool figure from a very cool season of the Clone Wars that I am very excited to add to my collection. I'm going to take a closer look at the packaging and then we'll dive right in and get that figure off the backing card and take a closer look. So of course we have the classic Clone Wars animated series red logo here on the Vintage Collection style card. We have the nameplate 332nd Ahsoka's Clone Trooper in blue. And we have artwork from the show with the clone troopers and that awesome orange painted helmet there. And of course we can see the figure there in the bubble. On the back we can see that this is VC248 and we can see some of the other figures from this wave. Fennec Shand, ARC Trooper Jesse, Figrin Dan, Ahsoka, Corvus, and so on. The packaging of these is pretty much the same down the bottom, just a huge wall of copyright and safety text. Nothing too interesting. It's almost a shame they have to put so much of this and not just sort of, you know, fit it on the paper at the bottom. But anyway, it's pretty standard these days. This one was harder to find in New Zealand. If you notice, the bubble on this one is a little bit dinged, which is okay because I knew I was going to be opening this one. You normally, you know, we do try to avoid that kind of ding, but this one's going to be loose, so that's okay. The backing card looks great. So, time to take that bubble off and let's take a closer look at the figure. So we've taken the bubble off the backing card and we can see the figure and the two weapons that are sellotaped in there. So let's get them out. Figure not too hard to take out. I'm just going to have to get these out from under the sellotape. There you go. And we've got the little safety paper for later. So now we can take a closer look at the figure. So of course, the first thing that you notice is this bright orange helmet, the customized Ahsoka Loyalist or Ahsoka's Clone Trooper paint job there. This is of course a removable helmet Clone Trooper. So let's get that off. If I can, that's on quite stiffly actually. Golly, okay, very stiff. How are we going to get this off? Let's have a look. Can we pop it? It's just gonna, oh my gosh, that's really on there. Oh, phew, wow. There we go. Now we can take a closer look at that helmet with its paint job. Pretty plain on the back, plain white, and then we kind of get this sort of brush stroke effect on the top with that classic orange Ahsoka Loyalist paint job there and some very small painted blue details here on the sides. Very, very small detail. I'm not even sure if the camera can focus that small, but very cool. And then of course we have the Clone Trooper long rifle, pretty standard, and the shorter one there. So let's take a closer look at the figure. Pretty standard Clone Trooper head sculpt. Nothing too sort of major there. He's got some pretty deep forehead wrinkles there. And yeah, of course, because this is one where you can put the helmet on, we end up with that sort of slight bobblehead effect, because otherwise if the head is too small, because this one has hair as well, you can end up with a very tight fit, as you saw, but the helmet ends up being just a little bit bigger so I can fit over the top, because the helmet has to have a certain level of plastic thickness. But I'll just pop that one there in the back. So expecting pretty standard Clone Trooper jointage from this figure. Classic shoulder articulation. We've got pretty good joints there at the elbows. and classic ones at the wrist. We have a pretty similar hand pose on either side where the fingers are sort of curled to put sort of like a trigger finger for the weapons. I do find that is a little bit awkward if you're trying to pose a clone trooper holding this rifle. This kind of trigger finger doesn't really want to hold onto this part of the rifle. It's a little harder to do that sort of two-handed pose, but generally speaking, we do see the clone troopers using this one a lot, so that's kind of okay. We've got articulation at that sort of upper torso area. Technically a join just under that belt, but it doesn't pivot there. Obviously, we've got the sort of easily movable head there. Same movement at the other arms. Classic knee joints, and the ankle joint for this one is a little higher up perhaps than I've seen on some figures. You can sort of see it there. It's a little higher up, obviously to match where the leg armor comes down. We can sort of get a little bit of texture there. So pretty good movement. Some figures are really stiff and I find them very hard to pose. This one's got pretty good joins. He's moving pretty well. Everything's kind of fitting snugly and not looking too odd. And he should stand pretty well for his articulation. Paint job, because this is a weathered sort of clone trooper, you're not really going to notice anything too amiss. Possibly some black on the back of the hand plate there. That one looks tidy. This one's got sort of a mark there on the back. Pretty standard. Maybe just like not quite the tidiest on the back of the knee, but that's just, you know, getting down to the very, very fine detail. Little gray detail on the back of the thermal detonators there. Tiny gray detailing on that back plate there. But of course the blue paint, you can almost not really tell if it's put on tightly or not because it's weathered. We've got the sort of scratches and, you know, the sort of battle weathering on the blue paint job. All in all, pretty much a standard figure that we were expecting. And I wish I had been able to find more so I could army build this. I think everyone wants to army build clone troopers. That's why, certainly for us here in New Zealand, they are hard to find. So I was glad to be able to grab this one when I could. So I'm just going to put that bun back on because I think it looks super cool with the helmet on. Such a distinctive look. I really wish I had more because I think this looks really cool. So of course, this one is VC248, but it is very, very similar. So we've got this one, which is the Ahsoka's Clone Trooper, VC248, but it is very, very similar to the recent 240, which is of course the 501st Clone Trooper figure. So let's take a closer look of them together because they are very, very similar. But standing them side by side, there are a couple of things that stand out to me almost immediately. The sculpting is pretty much the same, but there's a few differences with the paint job. If I pick them up, the feet are different. This one has the sandy sort of tread on the bottom of the feet. This one is pure white. And looking at them really close up, the blues are very, very different. You can see, particularly on the shoulders, that's quite different blue paint. And we've got some details on the helmets that are very different, painted differently. You know, we've got a lot more black lines. We've got this sort of gray part here. Obviously the top is very different, but we would expect the helmets to be painted very differently. But I think it's interesting that from the neck down, the figures are different as well. That different blue, different weathering, and even things like that thermal detonator. That one's got the gray dot, this one doesn't. And some differences, the striping on the legs is much thinner on this one than this one. Honestly, you know, seeing the sort of carded, I kind of thought there would be a lot more similarities between them, but I'm actually seeing that the paint job is actually quite different. I think, yeah, you can't, because I was curious to see if they'd just basically, you know, put the different helmets on. So let's see if I can have a look and see if the faces are different. Let's see how hard this one is to get off again. Okay, that one came off a little easier. Now this is where I'm worried I might mix them up. Let's take a closer look at the faces and see. I think it is pretty much the same sculpt. This one's just perhaps got a little bit more paint in those forehead wrinkles. Makes them look a little deeper, but I'm pretty sure that is pretty much the same head. As you would expect, they're sort of, you know, supposed to be the same clothes. They should all look the same. But interesting that they haven't gone with like a different hairstyle, because we know that a lot of the clones have different hairstyles to try and differentiate themselves. You can see this one here, how he has posed with a longer rifle. Honestly, getting these rifles in is very, very tricky. So we have just left that one in his hand because trying to get them in and out is a little tricky. I'm going to pop this guy to the back and we'll take a closer look at the helmets. Pretty much the same sculpting, just with that subtle difference in the paint jobs, obviously. Just this one doesn't have that grey and no paint on the back, because obviously they're custom painted by the Ahsoka loyalists, so I would expect them to be different. But it's interesting seeing them in hand. I think these look really cute by themselves. So let's see if this one is as hard to pose with blasters in his hand as the other one was. So for the shorter one, you can kind of, it's black on black, so it's very hard to see. His finger is kind of curled in and a little short. It doesn't actually want to go in where this sort of hole for the trigger is. It kind of just kind of rests against it. It's very, very hard. You kind of have to, I don't know if it's, I don't think it's really going to fit in there. It's just a little too short. With a little bit of wriggling, I might get that in there, but it's very hard to show. He holds it okay. It just doesn't sort of have the, I wonder if this one is better. A little better on this side, perhaps. But yes, I guess this is the issue that we have with the sort of the scaled weapons. Some of the older prequel era ones, they had the very big blasters. They were sort of very easy for the characters to hold. These smaller ones you'd think would be a little bit easier, but this one, you can see his finger is nowhere close to that trigger. So let's see if I can, he can kind of, let's see how well I can get him to hold it. If I can get his thumb out of the way, he can kind of hold it. Not too bad. Perhaps a little bit toy looking. I'm sure the expert posers out there will get something a little bit better than that. But I think that that's not too bad. This one, we had a real struggle getting him to hold it. Just those subtle differences with the fingers and the amount of plastic can really throw off how well they will hold their blasters. But I think this is pretty cool. I know that there are some different Clone Trooper sculpts coming out. You know that different collectors will have their different opinions. I don't mind this. Obviously, I will have mine displayed with their helmets on, which means they have a little bit of an oversized head with the helmet on, but it doesn't bother me too much. I am just very happy that they have done this Clone Trooper. I really wish I could buy a lot more of them, because both of these are, some Clone Troopers you only see in small quantities. These two particular, you know, you've got Anakin's, 501st and Ahsoka's. You do see them in generally pretty big quantities. I think it would be fun to see them sort of marching in big scenes on my action figure shelf, but for now I only have one of each. I was able to pick up a second one of this, but still it's not really quite the squad to march up the Jedi Temple steps. But yeah, very happy. No, nothing majorly sort of flawed, just that very small sort of paint splotch on the back of his hand there. But otherwise, pretty sturdy figure, pretty good. no wonky joints. He stands, he holds his weapon pretty well, and I really do like the vibrancy. I think it's interesting that the blue is so different. I hadn't really picked up on that until I had seen them together, and the differences with the stripe thicknesses and the weathering. It isn't just, I thought, you know, with Hasbro using some of the parts over and over again, I thought they might have just used basically the same body, but the paint job is different, the color is different, and little things like the tread on the boots is different. So very interesting to see those together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been entertaining. If you enjoy Star Wars unboxings, do check out our other videos. I'll catch you in the next one, and as always, may the Force be with you.
If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, check out our other videos, and subscribe for alerts about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.